What is good, you guys? This is Steven with All Talk On, and today we have another budget build done for real. Now, instead of following the standard formula that we usually go through for the budget builds done for real, which is I go on PC parts picker list, I pick out a really cheap budget computer, roughly $300, $400, and then I build it up. There has been one before where I did do it on Craigslist. This time we're going to go extremely low budget. Like, let's say you don't even have $300 to your name. As far as gaming goes, let's hope that you have more than $300 to pay your bills. But if you have less than that to get a gaming computer started, that's what this thing is focused on right now, and it does not have a name because... So in total, I spent $85 on this PC, and if you guys remember, I was doing the whole Craigslist thing. You guys can watch the vlogs to figure out exactly what I did, how I talked to people, prices I was looking for, and stuff like that, and as well as complete updates that were covered in the vlog parts. We're not really going to do too much about that in this video since they've already been covered, but we are going to go through the parts list real quick. So first off, we have a budget case, which I assume is Raid Max since it has a bunch of Raid Max fans in it. Though I'm not really sure, but it definitely looks pretty friggin' sweet, and it is like solid aluminum or steel or whatever. It's full, it's heavy, and it's big and bulky, and it's got these little gauges at the front that I could really care less about. But overall, sweet mid ATX tower case. Got it on the cheap. I paid $10 for the case with all the innards in it, which came with 4 gigs of RAM, as well as a AMD Athlon X2, I believe. So it had an old school AMD CPU in it, which I didn't use, as well as the motherboard, hard drive, 250 gig hard drive, and a few other random odds and ends, power supply that I didn't really care about. I really just wanted the case and the RAM. Up next, we have the motherboard, which is an Asus P5K Deluxe motherboard, which is actually a pretty intense motherboard for when it first came out. Obviously, the features on it are extremely outdated when you put it up against a Z170 or even a Z97 and X99 chipsets that are out nowadays. But even then, I was looking at it. It has things like built-in Wi-Fi, pretty excessive cooling on all of the components that you would need it. So up next, we have 6 gigs of DDR2 memory. I really did want 8 gigs, but I wasn't willing to extend the budget an extra 10 to 20 bucks just to get another 4 gig or 2 gig stick, or I would actually have to get 4 gig stick since that only has 4 slots, and they're all populated to equal those 6 gigs. Now, they are different memory modules and all that stuff, but as long as I ran them at the lowest speed that one of the memories were rated at, as well as the voltage and stuff, they ran just fine. I never had any instability issues with them. Maybe I'm one of the lucky cases. I don't really see an issue in running different RAMs. I wouldn't suggest it. Obviously, if you can, don't do it. But in this case, for $85, we had to do it. So yeah, we have 6 gigs of RAM, which is more than enough for now. And we'll get the job done for the most part in most gaming situations, but I would have liked 8 over 6 any day. Next, we have the power supply and the hard drive, which if you guys watch the vlog, then you know that I was able to pick up the power supply and the hard drive for 10 bucks. Technically, I only paid 10 bucks for the hard drive, and the guy just gave me the power supply because I looked at it and asked him how much he wanted for it, and he just gave me a weird look, and I was like, oh, it's a Coolmax, so I wouldn't really pay for it. He's like, you know what, just take it. So thanks to that guy for that. I didn't record any of that because he asked me not to record, so I didn't record it. But I showed you guys when I had gotten back from the vlog. So 640 gigs isn't like a crazy amount of space, but it's more than 500. It is a Western Digital Blue drive. I think it's only 5,400 RPMs. It's a pretty old hard drive, but it gets the job done. And will leave us definitely enough space to put all the games, at least that I wanted to test, which was actually several hundred gigs of games. You'd be surprised on how fast your games library can just add up. But storage is always expandable in the future, so that's not a big deal. Next, we have the graphics card, which is a GTX 750 Ti superclock. Now, once again, in the Craigslist ad, I was able to pick this up for $55. He originally wanted $65. I originally only wanted to pay like $30 or $40. I was really trying to get this budget super, super low, but he didn't want to budge on $55, so I told him, go ahead, you meet me on my side of town, though. And sure enough, he drove all the way down here to meet me on my side of town for me to buy it for $55. And that's basically where the rest of our budget goes, and that's our total $85. Now, there is one last part remaining, and that is the CPU. And if you guys remember, I said I did get the CPU for free. It is a Q6600. Now, the Asus motherboard that I had purchased for $10 did come with a Core 2 Duo 8000 series dual-core CPU, same era that the Q6600, I believe. If not, it was the Q90 9000 series. I don't remember. I think it was the Q9000 series generation. But either way, I did get the Q6600 for free from a broken computer, which if you guys don't know this, it's super easy to see someone throwing away an old computer and ask them if you could have it. That's basically how it goes. Or other ways that you can do it is garage sales. See someone trying to sell an old computer, maybe you can get it for 10 or 20 bucks, and lo and behold, it has a Q6600 in it. You never know. Or any of the Q9000 series quad cores are also a step up from this one and easier to overclock. Further at least. So this CPU was overclocked to 3.4 gigahertz at one point, which is a full gigahertz over its standard clock speed at 2.4. But it was pushing into the 70s, which was a little toasty for me. So I dropped it back down to 3.3. And the Thermaltake cooler, the tower cooler, no idea what its name is, that came with the AMD and CPU and the tower, I ended up fitting onto this with zip ties, but I didn't like the zip tie look, so I went through and I found a mounting bracket and everything for and spacings for an LG 775 socket motherboard from a Hyper 212 Evo. If you don't have a Hyper 212 Evo laying around, you know, you can always pick one up and put the whole cooler on there. But I didn't have the cooler, I just had the mounting hardware. But the zip ties did work just fine. I just wanted more of a less ghetto and permanent solution, and since I had the stuff laying around, I did that, and that kept our temperatures fairly stable around the 60s, occasionally pushing up into 70s, especially when I had it at 3.4, but under gaming load it stayed in the 50s and 60s, and this is 900 megahertz over its standard clock speed, which just shows how extremely intense overclocking was back in the day. So the BIOS wasn't a UEFI style BIOS at all. It was your old school. Have to use your keyboard and stuff like that, and it wasn't too bad to do. It was actually extremely easy compared to all the confusing features that they add into the newer chipsets. Though those features definitely can help with stability, it was just a lot easier to go through this one and just turn the front bus all the way up to, like, I think I had it at 365 or 366 or something like that, with a multiplier of 9 and a voltage of 1.36, I believe so. But either way, it worked out great, and as you guys will see in the benchmarks, it was an amazing performing PC, and for $85 you really can't top that. So let's roll the benchmarks. So after rolling the benchmarks, we can see that this is an extremely capable 1080p gaming machine. Definitely not aimed for high settings, maybe if you're at 720p, but overall, extremely playable frame rates, which is what I was aiming for. I was trying to get it to be able to handle 1080p at roughly 40 to 80 FPS in every single game, which it basically did handle. Now, there were some games that it shows that it did dip to around 20 to 30 FPS, and I can tell you right now, I've never really noticed that. There is one game, though, that I did have an issue with, and that is Ark Survival Evolved. and that game just overall just ran extremely crappy. If you guys saw, I launched it in the low 4 gig for the benchmark. That didn't even really do anything. Honestly, it ran the same as it did when I didn't launch it, so I don't know what the point of that was. But it was getting what looked like playable frame rates, 30s, 40s, and 50s, sometimes all the way up to 60s on low settings. But it was still just extremely choppy when it dipped, and it would dip a lot to 15, 20 FPS, and you could notice the dips definitely. Now I will say, even on my main rig, it would do the same thing. I have a 980 Ti and I'd be playing that game and it would randomly just dip to like 5 FPS and you would notice it. So I will say it was a little bit worse on this one, and you could tell how badly ported Ark is and how badly overall just optimized it is, because even dropping the resolution to 480p did absolutely nothing for it, which the game just inherently runs like crap, and it is playable, though you will be dealing with some skipping and some lagging, and yeah, it was just kind of a nightmare of an experience, not for the gaming, mostly just because the menu was even like laggy. So once you got in the game, it was fine. It was, every now and then you get frame dips and it would skip a little bit, but in the menu it was just laggy and load times were forever. Now that might have been because I was using extremely old overflowed hard drives. I wasn't using the hard drive that's in there now. I have a hard drive that I use to put all my benchmarking games on, and that hard drive was just overflowed with like I think it's a 480 gig drive, and I probably had about 440 gigs of stuff on it for games. So that might have had to play a huge part into why everything was so slow. And the benchmarking did take me a while for that, and looking back at it now, I probably should have just installed them all on this drive, but it's very time consuming to do that. So either way though, every other game 1080p, not a problem, ran just fine, and extremely excited for $85. So we will be doing this again in the future, you guys. I will be trying to get more. Maybe I might heighten my budget a little bit more. And if you guys are wondering, okay, so I didn't pay for the Q6600. If you guys want one, you can pick them up off of eBay for around $20 to $30, sometimes even $15. Now, if you want to step it up a little bit, you can go for the Q9000 series, which you can usually get for around $40 to $50. But I wouldn't pay $60 for it, because if you're going to pay $60, you can get yourself a Core i5. I can't remember the number after it, but it was one of the first or second i5s, and those only sell for around $60 to $80 to $100. Even the i5 2400 you can pick up for around $100. So those are all great options. Obviously different sockets, different motherboards. Basically what I would do is find out what kind of budget motherboard you can get your hands on, and then see how much it costs to get yourself an extremely, obviously you're going to want a quad core, but an extremely well-priced, well-performing CPU to fit in there. So what I did was, I had the Q6600 sadly, so I was already looking for 775s, but if I was to do the process all over again, I probably would have looked for an LGA 1155 or 1156. That way I would be able to get myself one of those older Core i5s for around the price of a Pentium G. So anyways, you guys, $85 PC. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, because if you guys didn't follow me on Twitter, those that were following know that I was randomly leaking benchmarks and pictures and stuff of this thing like literally all week, because I can only really edit videos on the weekend because work and stuff. So if you're not following me on Twitter, you probably should, because I was literally hashtag no NDA leaking benchmarks for this computer so you guys could see what it was. I did a teaser, GTA 1. I was talking about how it was running Crysis 3. Yes, it can run Crysis 3. You guys saw it. Well, anyways, you guys, I'm going to head out of here. Hope you enjoyed the $85 budget build. More to come in the future. Probably I want to aim for around $125 to $200 budget build. Always going to probably be used. I'll probably do more expensive, fully brand new computers in the future, but until then, we're going to stick with the cheap stuff. Anyways, you guys, this is Steven with All Talk On, and I'll catch you guys later.